This brand name caught my attention a lot in the last 2 years. They go by NYXI. NYXI specializes in Nintendo Switch accessories, cutting through the noise by offering standout products versus a myriad of dropship cookie cutter ones. In this video, we'll go over two flagship products that they have championed, the Hyperion series and the Wizard series controllers. Let's talk about them. Hi, I'm Clef and you're watching Game Tech Talk. You can now find me and the Retro Handhelds Discord under the Community Hub, and the Content Creator channel is a nice little spot for everyone and anyone that wants to have a chat with me. Both products have been provided in exchange of a fair review. Every opinions you'll hear in this video are entirely my own. And so without further ado, let's start with the Hyperion model. While this video focuses on the Pro version, we'll address the key differences shortly. But the best way to know which one you're going for outside of price is color. It is available in green, purple, black, what they call milk, I love that name, and transparent. Only the green and purple have Pro in their name, and so that makes the other models non-Pro. Much like Joy-Cons, each side have a battery and can stand on their own wirelessly using Bluetooth. NYXI lists up to 6.5 hours of playtime on a full charge, and it can also be directly attached to your Nintendo Switch or Switch OLED for charging and wired connectivity. In the box, you'll also find a middle attachment that, much like Nintendo's, brings both the left and right unit together as one. Joy-Con connoisseurs may have noticed the extra buttons. Not to worry, we'll go over them in a minute. Both analogs sport clickable L3 and R3, and addressing the Pro version, the one difference is Hall sensors, whereas the non-Pro uses regular ALPS ones. Just like other Hall sensor sticks out there, these use magnets to measure axis values, providing you with high fidelity and precision with reduced risks of drift over a decade, as the tech claims. Most of us have experienced this tech for 2 to 3 years now, and while they are indeed fantastic, one if not the only issue I've run into are bad calibrations from factory. But I'm pleased to say that every product I've tested with NYXI that uses Hall sensors have performed phenomenally. From having zero cardinal snapping to being very well tailored to making use of the radius without over-exaggerated dead zones. And if you were even wondering, yes, these are infinitely superior to Joy-Cons, both in comfort and overall precision. Outside of performance, the stick surface on the Hyperion is amongst the largest I've ever seen. That thing is like a California king for your thumb. Quite comfortable and with an edge ring that reminds me of the ones found on the Steam Deck. Last is one of those rings that helps the glide without friction. I love those. Overall, the analogs are a standout feature of the Hyperion and one that warrants a purchase. You don't know what you've been missing until you hold one of these puppies. Another particular feature is one you may have not heard of. At least I was new to it until a few months ago. Have you heard of precision rings by any chance? Turns out people have been putting material around their sticks to achieve various goals. Well, the Hyperion lets you detach it, revealing a metal ring that can be removed, or just lets you easily add one of those rubber ones. I do not have any opinion on the matter as of yet, as I have never tested those, but I think it's a cool detail nonetheless. The face buttons use membrane switches in classic Nintendo layout, whereas the D-pad uses tactile ones. The D-pad is good. I wouldn't go as far as saying great. The shape is iconic, traditional, and you can't go wrong with, but I do find corners a bit steep for my liking, and I find that the shape doesn't lend itself as well to tactile buttons. It also doesn't have a center pivot. You obviously cannot click all arrows at once, that's good, and also won't be traveling from adjacent arrows while holding one. If anything, especially on the color scheme, I like the gold accents, and I think it is the best pairing with my Zelda TOTK OLED Switch. Both minus and plus are little dots, tactile, as is almost always the case with function buttons. L and R, commonly named L1 and R1, are wide and click from anywhere you push on them. Tactile as well, with a very distinct sound as you actuate them. ZL, ZR, or L2 R2 for everybody else, are membrane buttons as far as I can tell. That is something less common and definitely a plus on this product. It offers a feel that is somewhat in between a digital trigger and an analog one. I actually really like those, and they are super silent. And then you have the latch to remove them, and when you do, you release both SL and SR. So yes, these could technically be used sideways like you would a Joy-Con, and then you also find the pairing button and the LEDs that shows when in pairing mode or which player from 1 to 4 that the controller is. Amongst those that remain is Capture on the left side and Home on the right one. But next to each of these is a T for Turbo. Those are extremely easy and simple to make use of and do exactly as you'd expect. Turbo has 3 modes: inactive, semi-auto, meaning that the turbo will only occur when you push the button, and full auto, which means that the button will turbo on its own without being pushed. It goes without saying, but T only operates the one specific to that controller. So left T won't work for ABXY, for example, the right T will. Each button can be independently operated, which means you could have inactive on B, semi-auto on A, and full auto on X and Y if you wish. That is up to the user and is very easily and quickly changed thanks to the very intuitive and simple to operate process. Hold T and push the button you wish to change its behavior for, and that's it. But it doesn't end there. T is also used for your LEDs. As you notice by now, A, B, X, Y are backlit. But the LED accents can be adjusted between 4 modes: off, fixed with 8 different color options, breathing that will cycle all 8 ones while having the breathing effect, and rainbow, which is effectively another breathing, but these one will remain on the rainbow scheme. For clarification, the rainbow colors do not rotate or move, they remain steadily in place, and both controllers are distinctly calibrated. So if you want one red and the other blue, by all means. In the back are 3 more, starting with the memory. The customizable button will let you remap any other to this back paddle behind the gamepad. To do that, you hold M and push a button and let go. Now, your paddle will repeat what you just recorded. As well, the memory accepts multiple inputs, including sticks, but also saves timings. The fact remains that left controller can only record left side buttons, and same for the right one. As an example, this could look like this. I tried mapping your mouse to scroll down to the subscribe, like, and comment, but apparently that must come from your own volition. Should you consider doing any of those, please know that it'll be greatly appreciated. As for the last one, this embedded guy, it cycles vibration intensity from 0 to 100% by increments of 25 each push. If it's your first time here, you wouldn't know that, but rumble is something I greatly love. And so in that sense, I might be a harsh critic at times. And when it comes to vibration, well, if there's really one thing I can knock it for, it is vibration. It lacks distinctiveness between degrees, and it is also quite loud. And while I prefer for it not to be, it is okay as long as it carries the haptics. But with this controller, it doesn't vibrate all that much, especially not for the sound that it outputs. The great news is everything else it offers on this controller is so strong that it does not feel like a compromise for this one aspect. To conclude with the Hyperion models, both have USB-C at the bottom that can be served to charge independently. Rest assured that it will also charge while connected to a switch, as Joy-Cons would. The USB-C is also used to update firmware that can be obtained from NYXI's own website under the Support tab. I would recommend that you only upgrade if you run into conflicts with your gamepad, and that you reach out to NYXI's customer support for further assistance if need be. According to the website, an Android app called Keylinker also exists to upgrade your firmware. I'd recommend that solution instead, if available for you. These controllers are extremely comfortable. They improve just about everything over the Ori's split pad, and they also offer greater ergonomics while remaining small-ish. The non-pros goes for $57 US. As of the making of this video, they currently have a sale with $5 off. As for the Pro version, which is the one I'd recommend, they go for $63 US. I should point out that the transparent model with its elevated aesthetics go for $59 US. Now, the Hyperion is a no-brainer Joy-Con alternative that offers much bang for your buck, but more importantly, a greatly elevated comfort over the traditional solution, with improvements across the board with the exception of having no amiibo support and the vibration. The Wizard series is one that completely shatters expectations and brings back an all-time favorite, as well as some pretty nifty revisited features to make it a champion in Nintendo Switch third-party solutions. That model is offered in all classic, all nostalgic GameCube color scheme, the very same gamepad that it is heavily inspired from. the iconic purple that Nintendo once called Indigo, black, and two more iconic ones, Spice Orange and Platinum. While you won't find a Pro version because they all effectively are equipped with Hall sensors, you will get to choose between a regular right stick that imitates the shape of the left one, or one sporting an iconic C-stick. Both options include swappable rings to encompass the analogs, one with an octagonal shape and the other as a perfect circle. Unlike the sticks, both options are included with your controller. Now, the included middle bridge also comes in one of two fashions, rechargeable for a small fee, while the other isn't. You might be thinking, well, how do I know which stick I like best? As it turns out, NYXI sells an add-on for $6 that will net you extra stick caps and extra rings. That way you can cover all grounds. Same goes for the USB-C bridge. It can be bought separately for $7. The Wizard goes for $70 or $75 if you grab the upgraded bridge all at once. Keep in mind that much like the Hyperion series, they can also be used wirelessly as they each have batteries in them. While the same 500 mAh battery ones can be found, NYXI lists up to 8 hours here, probably due to having no RGB. Now, to avoid confusion, the bridge will effectively let you recharge both controllers at once. This way you can leave it in the gamepad mode and use one wire to keep both Joy-Cons charging, but it doesn't carry data. As I'm sure most people would wonder, data is not supported, so connecting them both and then using a single USB-C cable will not suddenly make you use the gamepad wired as one unit. Let's list all the features it shares with the previous model. They each retain that USB-C chargeability and firmware upgrade feature. Every buttons you'd expect are present, and so is the T for turbo. ML and MR are here, but they are now called FL and FR. Same function, different names, that's all. And M used to configure them is now being replaced by a cogwheel and moved to the front of the unit. Face buttons are also backlit. I forgot to mention, but the Hyperion and the Wizard can wake the switch from sleep using the home key, whether it is connected or disconnected off of it, and also docking remains absolutely possible for both models. So what is removed, if anything? Only one thing actually. There is no longer a vibration cycling feature, but the function is still there by using shortcuts with the cogwheel button. What extra feature then does it have over the Hyperion? Probably the most obvious one, but still so great, is that the front now features two LEDs that give you a better understanding of your extra feature operations. The white LED means everything is normal. It'll turn blue if any button now has turbo activated. And if ever you have one on full auto, it'll blink rapidly. The other LED lets you know when you are recording from your back paddle, and the process is the same. Push the cogwheel, it'll blink, and put one or multiple buttons and push it again, and the paddle will now mimic what you just did. Just as before, they can only record buttons specific to their sides, so right can do ABXY, whereas the left can only record D-pad as an example. Now that we've covered differences and similarities, let's talk about what makes the Wizard unique. And we couldn't talk about them without addressing GameCube's revered gamepad. At first glance, it looks extremely similar, and surely there are very few products out there, especially in Joy-Con format, that will do as good a job at invoking that controller. But while it feels very similar, big-time aficionados will know that it has just enough to feel unique and different in a good way. One feature that will fool you without a doubt is the overall ergonomics. It fits like a glove, slipping into your pinky and ring finger cove. The back paddle does not feel in the way at all. In fact, it's a bit hard of reach, making it more of a convenience type button than one I'd rely on for efficiency. Overall, they really nailed the feel, yet it's also different. So let's face it, you now have a whole console nudged between each controller. It still is a quick and easy reminder as to why that controller was so praised, and still is to this day. But one difference that I find is superior is that the upper portion seems less pronounced with its arch than the original inspiration, and overall I find it makes my index fingers sit more nicely on the shoulder buttons, which, by the way, they feel completely different to anything Nintendo. They are highly clicky, extremely tactile with the absolute minimum traveling time. The face buttons are membrane based and feel extremely similar without a doubt, but the D-pad does not. It's bigger and wider and also is comprised of tactile switches. The printed arrows could have you fooled, but let it be known that D-pad is infinitely superior. It is designed for rapid execution, and you'll find that it'll be a repeated theme. From the center, you can easily go to any arrows. So yes, this thing effectively has a tactile center pivot. I had never seen that before. It also easily lets you click adjacent arrows with minimal movements. The original GC D-pad was smaller, mushier, and felt more tweaked towards long presses when playing platformers. These ones are much better at quick input commands. They'd also do a better job at being used sideways if ever you need, in a pinch, but if possible, I'd advise against it. It makes for a weird grip for sure. And that brings us to the inevitable title for which these exist. Are they the best controllers for Smash Bros? From what I tested so far, absolutely yes. Playing Smash has been an absolute blast and something that effectively conveys the nostalgia while retaining improved features. Finally, a button placement that arguably feels like the best we've ever seen, with the A sitting dead center and B being left to it. It's always surprising how natural a layout that's been retired over 15 years ago can immediately feel so current and second nature. And that brings me to the other side of that coin. Yes, it feels amazing, especially with games that will come from that era. Games that have some of our brains wired to know exactly where each buttons belong, but that is not necessarily the entire library of Nintendo Switch now, is it? The in-game HUD won't magically change to reflect that, and oftentimes, to make matters worse, games won't even name buttons as they need to account for the controller being used sideways or in pair. So rather, they'll show the bottom button or the left one instead of showing B or Y respectively. On this controller, that'd be A and B. It quickly can become confusing if you rely on visual indicators. That's not to say you can't make the most of it, but it'll have a bit of a learning curve for every other game and the Switch itself. What I'm saying is, for you to make the absolute most out of the Wizard, you have to be committed to making this your go-to by default. Because while I firmly believe it is to be far superior to nearly everything else, it will make you hit road bumps that you didn't think were there. And if you do yourself the favor of getting past them, you simply will not want to go back. It very much is a double-edged sword in that sense. A superior option that locks you in should you commit. But that is if you make it your daily driver. If you just keep it as a Smash Bros specific gamepad as well as a few other titles, don't think twice. You'll love it regardless and can go back to an Hyperion for every other game. Anyone who played Smash in that era knows that GameCube controllers became a hot commodity and that they were regularly bought because the sticks would fail from that highly exposed Smash Bros abuse. And with that in mind, the Wizard is easy to recommend because you won't have to replace it every 2 to 3 months, but in that same mindset, the game that it is designed for will undoubtedly be the best use case for it. Also, it does have a few more quality of life features that the Hyperion doesn't, but fear not, as both controllers come with a very detailed and thorough manual that you can refer to make sure you're not missing out on any feature. As a general use case, I find the Hyperion to be the option to go for from a leisure pace. Everything is where you'd expect it. Comfort is highly improved, so are the sticks, and call me a sucker, but I like me some RGB, I said it. And hey, if you want to get one after watching this review, heck, if you want to get 2, or however the number is, feel free to use my exclusive code, which I'll put at the bottom of the screen right about now. It doesn't cost you a penny more, but it does help the channel. Now, my wife loved the Wizard, so much so that I went and bought another one so that we don't have to fight over who gets the best controller. And to think, we used to argue over who would get the busted stick. I'm getting old.